I think everybody should be in a conference.
The two teams playing for the college football playoff championship have the two largest football budgets. Now, Notre Dame and Ohio State have unfair NIL advantages. Not really. Like I talked about last week, we talked about Notre Dame's unfair NIL advantage. It's not really an unfair advantage. It's more so the fact that they are in or not in the conference and then being independent in this bowl game, the bonuses that they got, which of course for the semis was $14 million. And just recently for getting to the national championship is $20 million macadamia nuts. That's a lot of doll hairs. And what you can do with that money from a school-wide situation, especially as revenue sharing is about to get introduced very soon into the world of college football, in all, it's going to help you with NIL. And it's going to help you with your football program. I promise you. So similarly to Notre Dame, Ohio State has been directly called out for their whole problems with their $20 million team. So we're going to hear Kirk Herbstreit kind of, call out the people calling that out. And then back on the Notre Dame situation, before we even get to that, because we're going to stay on them, we had James Franklin in the joint press conference with Marcus Freeman try to call out Marcus Freeman and say, hey, man, I think it's unfair. He says he thinks Notre Dame has to be in the conference. So we'll hear what that has to say. Obviously, he lost, so it don't really matter what he thinks, to be honest with you. So we'll hear that. We'll look at these numbers, these figures, and then we have a few stats for you, man. I appreciate y'all watching these videos. If you're enjoying college football coverage, NIL, transfer portal coverage, and any news in between, man, leave a like on the video. If you don't dislike the video, subscribe if you enjoy college football content, and let's go right into it. So like I alluded to, we talked about last week, right, the unfair advantage. Not unfair. You can use the money in a lot of multitude of ways, and if you are Notre Dame, someone who has a lot of money, when you get even more money for that expensive school, it probably helps out. So now a combined, just from what we're looking at, $34 million in winnings just for advancing to the playoffs. Now, before we get to, because I have some stats and facts, we're going to listen to these stats, facts, and then we're going to listen to James Franklin kind of get a little chip. This whole press conference was a little chippy. It was kind of like James Franklin was kind of son Marcus Freeman, but that didn't end up well. But don't like a lot of things RG3 says, but he made a good point here. So the transfer portal NIL continue to show why they have rocked the balance of college football. Quarterbacks for Notre Dame and Ohio State are both transfers. Two of the biggest NIL budgets in the country are facing off against each other. One SEC team in the semifinals, no SEC teams in the finals. A complete whole new world. I think this is what a lot of people were hoping for, a bit of a balancing out of the world. But really, it's just the people with a bunch of money got better. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I know that Texas was the last last SEC team technically in, right? But at the end of the day, we're just a really, really rich school. We're a rich Big 12 school. That's really what we are. So this is one of my favorite accounts I've been following. NIL versus NLI brings up a lot of different facts about NIL and kind of how these different programs spend their money. So he points out, look, there's no parity, he says. Money talks in college football. The two teams playing for the college football playoff championship also have the two largest football budgets. Now, this isn't specifically NIL. This is budget as a whole, because if you know, Notre Dame doesn't spend a lot of money in transfer portal. Now, it doesn't mean they don't spend a lot of money in NIL from their collectives and from NIL deals, because people try to get in the comments of one of my other NIL videos and say NIL is different from getting this and this is separate from collectives and this separate from. I know it is, but if you've also been watching long, if you've been watching with football long enough, they're not different, because NIL means you're going to get paid from the collective. Unless you're Travis Hunter, unless you're Shador Sanders, unless you're somebody who actually commands NFL money, you're not going to get enough money from NIL to get brought over to a school. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but yes, it's boosters. So no, it's not two different things, because they're using them synonymously. That's why it's a problem. So I get it. It's a difference, but they're using it the same. So just this is football money. And that's why I alluded to this being an advantage, right? I get it. They can't actually use it for NIL. They can't say, all right, boom, NIL money. But what they can do is make them facilities better. What they can do is, buy another fleet of uniforms. What they can do is add another barbershop into the in the football locker room. They can do that. And if you don't think that's not how you recruit people, y'all wonder why Carson Beck's in Miami. It would be really nice if a school had extra money to pay their girlfriends to go play soccer or volleyball or basketball. I don't know, whatever the Callender, whatever Carson Beck's lady. He went to Miami for his girlfriend, allegedly. Allegedly. So there's a lot of different ways. If you're a good recruiter, having more money means you can make something happen. I'm just saying, and it's an advantage. So of the 4 teams, this is obviously before my Longhorns. absolutely pissed down their leg in the semifinals. But Notre Dame has the most football NCAA violations. Penn State has the least. Well, interesting. Of the four, of Penn State, Ohio State, and Texas, Notre Dame has the second largest football budget, Ohio State being number one. Penn State has the lowest, which is something that we're going to get to in this right here. And then, of course, Notre Dame has the third highest athletic department value. Penn State has the lowest. And then, of course, the streak continues with Ohio State's win. The more valuable college athletic program has won every single college football playoff game. Ohio State is the most valuable, so don't get it twisted. Do not get it twisted. Them Ohio State boys is throwing some money around. And we're going to talk about that money, but let's go back to this whole conference situation, because James Franklin tried to get a little chippy. Let's hear it.
Obviously, you talk about just the differences between our two programs and conferences. I think it should be consistent across college football. I think, again, this is no knock at Coach or Notre Dame, but I think everybody should be in a conference. I think everybody should play a conference championship game, or no one should play a conference championship game. I think everybody should play the same number of conference games. I was a head coach in the SEC. I've been a head coach in the Big Ten. I was in the SEC when the whole conversation was whether to go to 8 or 9 conference games. We voted, all the coaches voted against going to 9 games. The commissioner agreed and kept it at 8. I think it was one of the better decisions as SEC made. The Big Ten went to 9 games. And, you know, I was not a math major at East Stroudsburg. But just the numbers are going to make things more challenging if you're playing one more conference game. So I just think things need to be consistent across.
And this is coming from the head coach. The head coach seems to say, look, I taught you about money. And, you know, we talk a lot about money on this channel. That's one of my favorite things to talk about. The money and the money of it, XYZ. But here's James Franklin. Forget the money part of the conference. Just think about the logistics. And last time we talked about, hey, Notre Dame is never going to be able to get a first-round bye if they don't join a conference, right? Because auto bid for the bye, the way the college football playoff set up, you have to be a conference champion. We talked about that being a negative. But then we look at the college football playoff play out, and no team with a bye won. So is that an advantage? I don't know, dog. I'm not sure, but regardless, it's putting and setting up Notre Dame with at least that they can get through conference championship week and not end up like Texas, who is higher seeded than Georgia, right? It was higher seeded XYZ, but has to play a conference champion in which they lose to it. Georgia becomes conference championship highest seeded. So those situations happening, and there's going to be changes to the college football playoff. That's already going to happen. Like, it's just bookend it, dog. It's going to be a change. With that being said, I think that's going to be one of the bigger things that they look at, especially with these independents, because it's going to be Notre Dame. And that's it. That's the only independent team that's going to be able to benefit from that. And a lot of people in my comments in my last video talking about independence, y'all were talking about how possibly, you know, maybe a Texas, maybe one of these other big names could, you know, become independent. I don't think that's a bad idea, but you have to understand there's so much money tied into these deals, right? That it's just it's insane to even think about someone unincorporating themselves. Go back and look up it. If y'all want a video on this, we can do a video on it. The amount of money that was thrown around by Oklahoma and Texas just to get to the SEC, just to get out the Big 12, was tens of millions of dollars of fines thrown around just to get to the new conference. So I could only imagine with the new deals, revenue sharing, all of this craziness, what it would like for one of these teams to try to go independent. It's over. Y'all are in 360 deals, and Notre Dame has the advantage, sadly, in that, because at this point, it's pretty advantageous. Now, I don't know how that works with TV deals and stuff like that, but going back to the big money conversation, because it's these two, the two teams that are in the college football planet, Ohio State and Notre Dame. I'm actually I know this is crazy, Texas fan, I should be finding ways to make Ohio State look dumb, or make them whatever, discredit them. This is actually Kirk Herbstreit defending Ohio State, and it brings up a really good point that we're going to talk about. So we'll hear him because, you know, this is on ESPN, so technically we can't.
That's what I think is interesting about this team. They brought in Caleb Downs, who's a great player. That's it. That's the only guy on defense. Yeah. They brought in a backup running back who hasn't played a ton. He's a good back. Yeah. And they brought in Will Howard, and they brought in a center from Alabama who's hurt, doesn't play. Yeah, exactly. So the perception is they went out and bought $20 million. Reality is they paid $20 million to keep their guys from leaving and going elsewhere. So I just think that
they went out and
But what I'm saying, I know, but
he didn't come cheap.
But bro, here's the thing: the perception is wrong with Ohio State. The perception is they went out and found players. The reality is this is a veteran defense and you know what it's like when you have a 3- and 4-year guys that have been there forever, won a lot of great games, lost a lot to Michigan, lost to Oregon, lost to Georgia. It's a hardened team that's been through a lot of. And I think that's what makes them really have a little bit of like, this is our last stance.
Yeah, and I think something, and you could take this as a good way or a negative way, depending how you see the future of college football. But a lot of the times, and a lot of stuff on this channel we've been talking about, we haven't even gotten into the collective money for the actual teams. We've been talking about bags for transfers and, basically free agencies, but we have yet to get into this bag talk about players on the team, right? We've alluded to it. We've talked about a little bit of it, right? These, Stewart from SC or the quarterback from Kansas signing deals. I think there was a cornerback out of Tennessee re-signing deals. It's a sophomore, freshman re-signing a deal. All these, Ryan Williams has to send out tweets. Hey, I'm staying. By the way, I'm not entering the transfer portal. By the way, I got my munyon. By the way, like this is positive in the whole Ohio State standpoint, because just like I was talking about my original point, what he's bringing up is that, hey man, it's not always just the transfer portal. We're just poaching people and people are going all the. It's not always that. Like let's also be honest here. I think the biggest majority of NIL money, which is what we all want it to be, and what we all have to sit back and say, hey, I'm happy that those kids are getting paid, are people who, hey, JTT, that's an Ohio State guy. Jack Sawyer, that's an Ohio State guy. Like these are besides Caleb, like again, the people he alluded to, Caleb Downs, Quinshawn Judkins, Will Howard. I think Will Howard was from Ohio. Somebody correct me. But other than those names, I know you had some, like I said, centers here and there. Ime Ibuka's been on the team for 3-4 years. Ime Ibuka is just he was playing with the other demon wide receivers that they had. I think he was playing with Terry. I could be wrong. I think that was too far. But he like Ime Ibuka, I don't know how to say his name. Ime number 2. He played with MHJ. He played with CJ Stroud. If somebody correct me, he played with JSN. Like this isn't just some dude that they found. No, Ohio State's been doing a good job, national champion or not. Ohio State is one of the Big Ten teams that consistently produces SEC level, quote unquote, talent when it comes to the draft, right? So let's not all act dumb and say, oh, well, what it means is that all these rich schools can just snatch up transfers, because one, we see that that's not where Ohio State's the biggest numbers from. And two, I'm gonna use my team Texas as it. Texas, we are known for taking transfers and making them core pieces of our offense. And guess what happens? Isaiah Bond. I love him to death. Xavier Worthy. He had a dropping problem for 2 fucking years until he figured it out. Now, shout out 99 Mitchell. Shout out, what's it called? Jade Barron. You know what I'm saying? Shout out Muhammad, right? Shout out my boys who do it big, because we've had a lot of great transfers that do it great. Shout out Moore from UTEP or UTSA, sorry. So it's a slippery game, and it's not always just this kid getting a bunch of money in this school giving a bunch of money, and it's not always just someone getting poached, right? So yeah, give the fair advantage to Ohio State. Doesn't mean I ain't rich. Doesn't mean Notre Dame isn't insanely rich. Reseeded teams that have the most NCAA infractions. So just want you to know, Arizona State, big boy with the infractions. Georgia number 4, Ohio State at number 4, Notre Dame at number 5. Look at those nice NCAA infractions. When you have a lot of money and you throw it around, it happens to happen like that. But y'all let me know in the comments, man. Is Notre Dame unfair? Is Ohio State unfair? Is this an NIL advantage? Is this a college football advantage, man? Is it unfair? I don't know. Maybe Texas just needs to get their money on up. Hey, Matthew McConaughey needs to reach into them Interstellar bucks and put some money on the table. That's all I'm saying. But y'all be great. Y'all be phenomenal. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Leave a like video if you like it. Dislike if you don't like it. Subscribe if you enjoy college football content. We'll see you next time.